He claims that he's like 2 weeks older than me. As far as my life, I know my mother and father was always together.
Stand united together to protect your father's legacy by proving that Mr. Triplett is not your sibling. You've always known that Mr. Creedell Jones is your father, and you hope that once the DNA results are revealed, Ms. Yarbrough and Mr. Jones will welcome you with open arms.
From 1964 to 1974, my father was there, my mother was there. I've never even heard of Mr. Triplett.
You never, ever had any idea this man would be 2 weeks older than you? You grew up thinking you were the oldest child.
Yes, for 50 years.
50 years?
50 years.
You say your father signed your birth certificate? So this is your birth certificate and your brother's. Both of.
When truth enters the courtroom, it doesn't whisper, it roars. In Judge Lauren Lake's court, DNA tests aren't just about science. They're about shattered trust, lost identities, and the thin, trembling line between law and justice. This isn't just another divorce case or cheating story. It's the emotional battlefield where evidence meets the human heart, where the truth changes everything, forever. Every courtroom has its rhythm, a measured heartbeat of law, order, and human pain. But when Judge Lauren Lake steps to the bench, that rhythm changes. Her voice isn't just authoritative, it's personal. In the emotionally charged cases that define paternity court, the pursuit of truth becomes something deeper than a legal formality. It becomes a journey into who we are, where we come from, and what justice really means. The episode opens with questions that echo through generations. Who is my father? What is truth? What happens when a DNA test rewrites a lifetime of belief? For people standing before Judge Lake, these aren't abstract questions. They're the stories that define their entire existence. In this double episode, we witness two families standing at the edge of revelation, each moment driven by hope, regret, and the unrelenting weight of proof. The courtroom itself becomes a stage for human truth, where evidence doesn't just live on paper, it breathes through emotion. The first half of the episode revolves around a dispute involving the late Creedell Jones, a member of the legendary group The Shy Lights. For decades, his legacy lived in music, royalties, and fame. But for his children, known and unknown, it's the legacy of belonging that matters most. In this emotionally charged case, Judge Lauren Lake listens as Miss Yarbrough and Mr. Jones try to protect their late father's estate and family honor, standing against Mr. Triplett, a man who claims to be their long-lost brother. The DNA test has become their battlefield, the modern proof that decides family, inheritance, and identity. But beneath the surface of adverse inference in evidence and legal arguments about heirs and rights, lies something far more human. The desperate need to know who you are. Here, Judge Lake becomes more than a judge. She becomes a guardian of both truth and compassion. She listens not just to what is said, but to what is felt. Her courtroom is a space where the concept of justice in jurisprudence transforms from theory into humanity, because for every witness, every test result, every tear, there's a story about love, loss, and belonging that no statute could ever capture. When the results come in, the courtroom holds its breath. DNA doesn't lie, but its truth cuts deeply. As Judge Lake reads the verdict, revealing that Mr. Triplett is indeed family, the atmosphere shifts. What began as suspicion becomes reconciliation. The cold lines of the Evidence Act dissolve into the warmth of acceptance. It's the rare moment where law meets grace, where justice isn't just served, it's felt. That is the power of the Game Changing Attorney podcast. Not as a show about litigation, but as a mirror to what Lauren Lake embodies every day. The understanding that every decision, every ruling, every tear in the courtroom reflects the fragile relationship between law and justice. In her courtroom, people don't just face evidence, they face themselves. But truth has more than one stage. The second case in this powerful double episode transitions from legacy to loyalty, from inheritance to heartbreak. This time, it's a divorce case, one shaped by betrayal, emotional exhaustion, and the haunting presence of a DNA test. The couple before Judge Lake, Mr. and Mrs. White, arrive carrying not just documents, but years of pain. He believes she cheated. She admits she did. Yet both remain tethered by one thing: love and a child named Savannah. This is not just a legal hearing. It's a podcast of life and confession, echoing stories shared on Celebrate Recovery Testimonies and the Divorce Course podcast. Each word they speak feels like evidence, each tear a testimony. Mrs. White claims she wants to rebuild her marriage, to fix what's broken. Mr. White stands torn between love and the unbearable doubt that the daughter he adores may not be his. It's here where Judge Lauren Lake's courtroom transforms once again, from a space of justice to a sanctuary of truth. In this stage of divorce, evidence isn't just physical, it's emotional. The DNA test is no longer just a swab of cells, it's a symbol of trust. Judge Lake stands at the intersection of heartbreak and honesty, reminding both sides that before they can rebuild their family, they must face the truth, no matter how painful. It's here where the principle of adverse inference finds new meaning. Silence and deceit have consequences, even when the heart means well. As the couple reveals their messages, their confessions, their guilt, Judge Lake listens, but she doesn't judge them as people. She judges their choices, their truths, and their courage to confront what they've done. She represents what jurisprudence strives for, not perfection, but understanding. The courtroom becomes a modern-day confessional, a place where truth changes everything. When the DNA evidence is finally revealed, and it confirms that Mr. White is indeed Savannah's father, the emotional release is overwhelming. It's not just a victory of science, it's a restoration of faith. The couple, who entered broken and resentful, leave with something stronger than certainty. They leave with hope. Judge Lake doesn't celebrate the result as a legal win. She celebrates it as a human recovery. Like an adoption story reborn, the family is invited to rebuild not just trust, but identity. This is the essence of paternity court. Beyond the cameras and court transcripts, each episode serves as a living exploration of the relationship between law and justice. Through DNA results, testimonies, and heartfelt truths, Lauren Lake demonstrates that evidence may close a case, but empathy opens hearts. The show isn't merely about who the father is, it's about the philosophy of justice. The idea that truth, no matter how painful, has the power to heal. Just like the profound reflections shared on the Game-Changing Attorney podcast, this episode stands as a reminder that justice isn't static. It evolves with every person who stands before the bench. Whether it's a musician's child fighting for acknowledgement, or a husband seeking truth in betrayal, every case carries echoes of universal questions. What does family mean? Can love survive the truth? Can we forgive once the evidence is undeniable? In this way, Judge Lauren Lake's courtroom becomes not just a set for reality TV, but a mirror to modern life, where relationships, secrets, and redemption all meet under the fluorescent lights of justice. And as the cameras fade, we're left to ask ourselves, in our own lives, how much truth are we ready to face? When the gavel falls in Judge Lauren Lake's courtroom, the echo doesn't just signify the end of a case. It signals a moment of transformation. What begins as conflict often becomes clarity. And in that clarity lies one of the hardest truths people face. Sometimes, DNA doesn't just reveal paternity. It exposes identity, morality, and the fragile foundation of human connection. Every DNA test that unfolds in her courtroom carries the emotional gravity of people who regret taking it. Not because the science is wrong, but because the truth demands change. Once the truth arrives, it rearranges everything. Relationships, memories, even self-perception. For many, that truth destroys illusions they've carried for decades. For others, it restores a part of themselves they never knew they'd lost. This is the dual nature of justice. It gives and it takes away. And no one embodies this balance more gracefully than Judge Lauren Lake. In this episode, truth unfolds across generations, between music and marriage, inheritance and betrayal. It's a living tapestry of law and emotion, a reflection of what the Game-Changing Attorney podcast often discusses. The idea that justice isn't about punishment, it's about transformation. Every revelation in Lake's courtroom forces her litigants to confront not only legal evidence, but the stories they've told themselves for years. For Miss Yarbrough and Mr. Jones, the DNA test was about protecting legacy, guarding their father's name, their rights, their truth. Yet, when the results revealed Mr. Triplett as family, it shattered their certainty. Lauren Lake could have simply read the results and adjourned, but instead she paused, looked into their eyes, and gave them something greater than judgment: understanding. She reminded them that truth doesn't always arrive to divide. Sometimes it comes to unite. In that moment, law became empathy, and justice became healing. This emotional intelligence, this blending of compassion with command, is what defines Judge Lake's courtroom philosophy. It's also what resonates across the divorce and recovery podcasts that echo similar truths, like Celebrate Recovery Testimonies and the Divorce Course podcast. These platforms explore the same reality: that facing evidence of infidelity, addiction, or betrayal can either break you or rebuild you. The choice depends on what you do with the truth once you have it. For Mr. and Mrs. White, that truth became both punishment and redemption. The DNA test revealed more than biology. It revealed character. When Mr. White discovered his wife's cheating through text messages, he felt his world collapse. The Evidence Act in his personal life wasn't written in statutes. It was written in screenshots, messages, and memories. In another courtroom, this might have been treated as a mere adultery case, but under Lauren Lake's watch, it became a study of love's endurance under pressure. The courtroom is a paradoxical stage. It exposes lies, but it also invites redemption. Mrs. White, through tears, admitted her infidelity and confessed that her actions stemmed from deep emotional wounds tied to her adoption story. This is where Judge Lake's brilliance shines. She sees the human beneath the legal. She recognizes that broken trust often comes from broken hearts, and that justice without compassion becomes cruelty. The concept of justice in jurisprudence, in her hands, becomes something living and humane, a reflection of Aristotle's old idea that justice means giving each person what they deserve, not only by the letter of the law, but by the spirit of fairness. It is this balance that turns her courtroom into something much greater than television drama. It becomes a living classroom on emotional truth. The DNA test serves as both evidence and metaphor. On one hand, it's the ultimate scientific standard of proof. On the other, it's a mirror that forces people to confront what they've denied for years. It answers questions science can measure, but it also raises questions only the soul can resolve. This is the heartbeat of the Game-Changing Attorney podcast, the same duality that drives Judge Lake's work. Both seek the intersection between law and humanity, where advocacy becomes art and evidence becomes emotion. In both spaces, stories of injustice, redemption, and resilience remind us that law isn't cold. It's deeply human when done right. In the White case, that humanity is laid bare. We watch a husband fighting the urge to hate the woman he still loves. We see a wife pleading for forgiveness, not from the court, but from herself. Their confessions become their testimony. Their marital evidence isn't found in contracts or photographs. It's written in the exhaustion of their voices, the tremor in their hands, the pain that won't quite let go. These aren't just litigants. They're living testimonies of recovery. Their story, like so many heard in Celebrate Recovery, becomes a parable of grace through accountability. Judge Lake listens, not with judgment but with curiosity, the kind of listening that heals. She tells them something unforgettable. You can't fix what you won't face. That single sentence echoes far beyond her courtroom. It applies to divorces, family feuds, even to nations divided by ideology. It is the purest form of truth as recovery, And then comes the game-changing moment. The DNA test results are revealed. Savannah is indeed Mr. White's child. The courtroom sighs in collective relief, but the deeper truth remains. The real verdict is not in the paper Judge Lake reads, but in what the couple chooses to do next. For justice doesn't end at, "You are the father." It begins there. In that revelation lies a deeper question that the Divorce Course podcast and legal philosophers often ponder. Can truth heal, or does it only expose? The answer depends on the heart receiving it. For Mr. White, the truth restores trust. For Mrs. White, it redeems her motherhood. Together, they represent a fragile but beautiful reality, that even in the ruins of betrayal, love can still rebuild if justice leads with compassion. It's in moments like these that Judge Lauren Lake's courtroom transcends entertainment and enters the realm of modern jurisprudence. She applies not just the rules of evidence, but the wisdom of empathy. Her understanding of adverse inference, the legal principle that silence or refusal to produce evidence can imply guilt, takes on a poetic meaning here. In relationships, silence is evidence. Lies unspoken, truths withheld, affection denied. These become the invisible exhibits of emotional law. And when those emotional exhibits are finally presented, when people stop hiding from their truth, something miraculous happens. Justice transforms from punishment into peace. This is the very essence of what the Game-Changing Attorney podcast explores in its philosophy. Law as a human force, justice as something lived, not just litigated. Each episode of Paternity Court becomes a meditation on these values. It merges courtroom realism with spiritual reflection. The DNA test becomes the new cross-examination of the heart. The judge's bench becomes an altar of honesty. And Lauren Lake, as both attorney and empath, reminds viewers that truth isn't cruel, it's cleansing. Her voice is calm but resolute when she reminds participants, this court is not here to destroy families. It's here to rebuild them on truth. That statement alone embodies the modern-day philosophy of justice as restoration. It reflects what modern legal ethics call therapeutic jurisprudence, the idea that the law, when practiced with emotional intelligence, can be a form of therapy for those it touches. We see it happen repeatedly. A child learns who their real father is. A husband learns his wife's betrayal, but also her remorse. A sibling discovers unexpected family across decades. These are not just verdicts, they are rebirths. Each outcome is a chance for recovery, echoing the celebrate recovery testimonies that affirm healing is possible when truth is faced openly. Judge Lake's courtroom is, in essence, a living microcosm of justice in its purest form. It reminds us that truth, even when it hurts, sets people free. The law alone cannot fix broken relationships, but it can illuminate the path toward forgiveness. Evidence alone cannot repair a heart, but it can stop the bleeding. And when both law and compassion coexist, as they do in Judge Lake's rulings, we see justice not as punishment but as grace. There is a moment, after the cameras fade and the results are read, when silence fills the room. That silence is sacred. It's the pause between revelation and reaction. It's where families breathe again. It's where the human spirit, once crushed under suspicion and guilt, stands up. That is where truth truly changes everything. In this courtroom, adoption stories find closure, cheating stories find redemption, and even the hardest divorces find a fragment of hope. The human journey through pain, evidence, and reconciliation unfolds not just for entertainment, but as a living reflection of the timeless question, what is justice without love? Truth has a way of echoing long after the courtroom empties. When Judge Lauren Lake delivers her verdict, the sound isn't merely that of a gavel. It's the sound of hearts breaking open, of families realigning, of lives rediscovering what justice truly means. Because in her courtroom, the DNA test is never the end of the story. It's the beginning of a deeper one. The one that asks, what will you do with the truth now that you have it? There's an almost sacred rhythm to how Judge Lake delivers these moments. It's deliberate, compassionate, and firm, each word measured, each pause intentional. She knows that evidence can prove a point, but empathy can change a life. This delicate balance between law and love lies at the very core of her. Philosophy and mirrors themes often explored in The Game, Changing Attorney podcast that the best advocates are those who understand the soul of justice as much as its letter. In every divorce case, every adoption story, every confession of cheating, and every DNA revelation, Judge Lauren Lake embodies the higher principle that truth changes everything. That phrase isn't just a moral idea, it's a practical force. It transforms denial into awareness, secrecy into freedom, and regret into recovery. It's the law applied not only to actions, but to emotions. The White family's story becomes a perfect mirror for this principle. What began as a confrontation between husband and wife, drowning in infidelity, mistrust, and resentment, turns by the power of truth into a story of possibility. As the DNA results confirm that Savannah is indeed Mr. White's child, the couple's faces soften. There's no celebration, no applause, just relief. The truth doesn't erase the pain, but it gives it meaning. It's as if Judge Lake's courtroom becomes less about who's guilty and more about who's willing to change. This is where the concept of justice in jurisprudence finds its purest, most emotional expression. Law, in its traditional form, is rigid. It deals in proof, statutes, and precedent. But Lauren Lake's court introduces a living layer of human truth. She often reminds litigants that justice isn't about punishment. It's about alignment. In other words, truth aligns people back with reality. It doesn't always comfort, but it always corrects. It's that correction, sometimes painful, sometimes liberating, that gives justice its moral power. As we've seen across many of her cases, from celebrity inheritance battles to ordinary family disputes, Judge Lake brings both legal expertise and human insight. When she handled the case involving the legendary musician Courtroom Jones, she didn't just resolve a paternity claim, she resolved a lifelong identity crisis. For Mr. Triplett, the DNA test became the bridge between myth and memory, between the story he'd been told and the one proven by science. For Miss Yarbrough and Mr. Jones, the truth forced them to expand the borders of their hearts. They entered the courtroom, ready to defend a legacy. They left realizing that legacy grows through inclusion. That transformation, from adversary to ally, is the quiet power of Judge Lake's courtroom. It's the transformation many people seek in Celebrate Recovery testimonies, the moment when truth is no longer the enemy, but the beginning of healing. It's also what makes her courtroom uniquely therapeutic. Viewers aren't just watching cases, they're witnessing catharsis. Each episode functions like a recovery session for the soul, reminding us that everyone deserves the chance to confront their pain and redefine their future. The Adverse Inference in Evidence Act may define the consequences of withholding proof, but Lauren Lake applies its spirit in a deeper sense. If you hide from truth, your silence becomes your verdict. She sees it in every broken couple who stops communicating, in every parent who avoids a DNA test, in every child who grows up never knowing who they are. For her, truth isn't about winning or losing, it's about freeing. Freedom from uncertainty, freedom from guilt, freedom from lies that bind families in generational cycles of hurt. This approach echoes the wisdom found in the Divorce Course podcast, where couples confronting infidelity or separation often realize that closure doesn't come from vengeance, it comes from truth. The connection between law and justice becomes personal here. Law provides the framework, but justice provides the heart. Without that heart, even the most accurate DNA result feels cold and incomplete. That's why Judge Lake always follows her verdicts with something deeper. A human reflection, a reminder that truth has to be lived, not just heard. The White case shows that reality in vivid detail. When Mr. White breaks down explaining his pain, working 7 days a week, loving his daughter despite the doubt, enduring betrayal but still hoping, he represents millions who've been broken by mistrust but still crave reconciliation. And when Mrs. White admits to her wrongs, connecting them to her adoption trauma, and feelings of abandonment. She shows that even those who cheat are often carrying unhealed wounds. It's not an excuse, it's an explanation. And Judge Lake gives space for that humanity to breathe. That's what makes this episode more than a cheating story. It's a study in emotional jurisprudence, the unseen laws that govern love, loyalty, and forgiveness. As Judge Lake says, the evidence might end the case, but only honesty can rebuild the relationship. That is the moment where justice meets mercy. The Supreme Court may define justice through precedent, but Judge Lake defines it through presence. She stands in that courtroom not just as a representative of legal authority, but as a guide through emotional chaos. She reminds us that law and love are not opposites. They are partners in the search for truth. The relationship between law and justice, therefore, isn't just theoretical. It's deeply personal. It's what happens when human stories enter a legal system that dares to care. What makes her approach revolutionary is how she turns even the hardest truths into opportunities for redemption. When the DNA results expose infidelity, she doesn't shame, she teaches. When they confirm hidden family ties, she doesn't exploit, she celebrates. And when they reveal painful truths about parenthood or betrayal, she brings the focus back to what matters: children, healing, and future choices. This philosophy is what links Paternity Court with the broader world of justice podcasts and legal storytelling. In the Game Changing Attorney podcast, we often hear lawyers discuss strategy, advocacy, and courtroom dynamics. But beneath that, the real game change happens when the attorney becomes a healer of human conflict. Lauren Lake exemplifies that perfectly. She turns the adversarial process into a collaborative search for truth. Her rulings don't just close cases, they open hearts. In that sense, every DNA test she reads is both an ending and a beginning. For some, it's the end of doubt. For others, it's the start of grief. But for all, it's the revelation of truth, a truth that changes everything. Through her courtroom, we see that truth is not the villain, it's the liberator. Whether it's uncovering adoption stories that restore family connections, or confronting infidelity that forces people toward accountability, the message remains constant. Evidence may reveal, but empathy redeems. As the final moments of the episode unfold, Judge Lauren Lake delivers one of her quiet reflections, the kind that lingers long after the credits roll. She reminds the participants